Luis and the Boot Repairer, Moral Inequality, Shared Suffering, and the Justice of Conscience. The account Luis and the Boot Repairer, presented in the second part of The Heaven and Hell, clearly exposes how social inequalities, relationships marked by selfishness, and indifference to the suffering of others produce profound moral consequences that manifest after death. It is a testimony that reveals the justice of conscience operating beyond social appearances. Luis manifests spiritually, carrying the weight of choices made in life, in which personal interest, social position, and lack of empathy guided his attitudes. The Boot Repairer, in turn, represents humble condition, hard work, and the silent suffering lived without recognition. In the spiritual world, external hierarchies disappear, and what remains is the real impact of attitudes on the involved consciences. Modern depth psychology helps to understand this scenario by demonstrating that asymmetrical relationships, when marked by emotional exploitation or moral indifference, leave lasting scars. The consciousness that benefits from the suffering of others without reflection tends to build mechanisms of denial in life. After passing, when these mechanisms dissolve, contact with moral reality generates intense suffering. Spiritism clarifies that the suffering experienced by Luis is not arbitrary punishment. It arises from the awakening of expanded empathy, when the consciousness begins to clearly feel what it has caused to others. On the other hand, the seamstress, who endured difficulties with resignation and dignity, finds in the spiritual realm a lighter moral condition, not due to privilege, but because of how she lived and faced her trials. Modern science reinforces this logic by showing that empathy and social responsibility are pillars of ethical development. When these capacities are not cultivated, maturity is compromised. On the spiritual plane where consciousness expands, the absence of these virtues becomes a direct source of suffering, inviting a profound review of values. Another essential point of the account is the inversion of appearances. What seemed like an advantage in life, position, comfort, power of choice, does not guarantee inner peace after death. What truly sustains consciousness is the moral quality of relationships, the ability to recognize the other as equal in dignity and worth. Spiritism shows that this suffering is not definitive. As Luis understands the extent of his responsibilities and develops a sincere desire for reparation, a process of moral re-education begins. Spiritual justice does not humiliate, it clarifies. Suffering serves as a pedagogical instrument, inviting inner transformation. This account also invites us to a current and practical reflection. In a world still marked by inequalities, dehumanized labor relations, and social indifference, every daily choice carries moral weight. Ignoring the suffering of others, even when socially accepted, leaves deep marks on the conscience. Luis and the Boot Cobbler teach us that true equality is not only social, but moral. Treating others with respect, empathy, and responsibility is a direct investment in one's own future peace. Conscience does not rest on privileges, but on values. Reflecting on this testimony is an invitation to ethical vigilance in the present. Asking ourselves how our attitudes affect those who depend on us, work with us, or live in more difficult conditions is an essential exercise in spiritual growth. If this account has helped you reflect on empathy, moral justice, and social responsibility, like, share, and leave your comment. Your participation helps this message reach more people.